Commanders keep, the ones that discuss, the commanders to keep, and the ones to weep over. Hello and welcome again to Commanders Keep, old versus new versus new. Well, the reason why I said an extra verse is because this particular card has 3 now iterations. The latest iteration hasn't come out yet. It's in the Modern Horizons block of 3, but we'll see to that in a second. So let's talk about who we're on about, the monstrous mystery that is Emrakul, the Aeons Torn. Right, so Emrakul, the Aeons Torn, as those of you who are in the know, should know that it is a 15/15 with Annihilator 6, and it can't be countered, and it has the ability, if you cast it, you get have an extra turn after this one, because its core cost is a 15 colorless, which is a lot of mana to get at one point. I can totally understand why at the time when they made it, they gave you an extra turn. However, but if it would ever die like any of the other Eldrazi Titans, it would be shuffled back into your library. So unless somehow you respond in the shuffling point, that card's going to come back like a horrible monster. And at that point, it's the reason why it's banned in Commander, because it's a house, it's amazing. It shouldn't be banned in Commander. I say unbanned in Commander personally, but obviously others have played against it down in Standard, Modern, and other formats, and at some point as well in Commander. It's really hard to deal with because it has protection from colored spells, right? So obviously protection really only works in the targeting sense, right? So if you have a bit of removal, and then you could then decide to Swords to Plowshare it, Path to Exile, Doomblade, and such, but it can't be targeted by those sort of spells. However, globals can deal with it, but if that player has managed to crack that out, they've got an extra turn, and you're going to lose 6 permanents, because that's how Annihilator works. Annihilator is an attack trigger that when something attacks, the opponent has to sacrifice equal to the Annihilation trigger. So obviously other Eldrazi have been kept in with some degree of Annihilators in the format, but this one, the old house, is banned, which I'm not exactly happy about, you know, and it should possibly be brought back into the fold. But we've got a lot to talk about because there's 3 of these bad boys. Let's move on to the next one. The next one, which I'm sure that others have possibly played in their Eldrazi precons or upgraded the precons or played it when it was in Standard and such, is Emrakul, the Promised End, which is a 13 mana drop for a 13/13, which it costs 1 less to cast for each card type in amongst cards in your graveyard. So obviously if you're doing a discard strategy, it's a lot quicker to get out because it's cheaper based on types. So obviously your land will just one, instant will just another, a creature will just another, sorcery another, and so on. So therefore it can easily be more cast than the other one, so you don't get an extra turn when you cast this one. However, when you get to cast this, and this is the interesting caveat regarding this one, is when you cast Emrakul, you gain control of target opponent during their next turn. After that, that player gets a subsequent turn. And it also has the lovely key abilities on it of flying, trample, and protection from instants. So it's got protection from instants, not as good as the last one, which was protection from colored spells. But it's more sort of concise and broke it down to say instants, which to be fair, in the previous one, it was instants because you cannot target something if it has protection. So protection gets around that. I mean, it's the same thing as if you had a Progenitus, which is a different card altogether, and it has a lot more colours than these ones. That one cannot be targeted by anything because it's protection from anything. However, the global spell does not dictate or say anything to do with target. That is just, it happens. It's the global field. Now, if the creature also had Indestructible, which to be fair, this particular monster in any iteration had Indestructible, how's it getting dealt with? It's not getting dealt with. You're just going to die. You're going to die to its massive, horrible 13/13 smashing trampleness, or 15/15 smashing trampleness, or the next one's level of trample smashiness. You just would be steamrolled, and you don't have to lose the permanents, but you do lose a turn. And that's the scary bit. You could lose your turn, and your opponent could take your hand. You've just sitting there cultivating all your lovely spells to make sure you're doing something. It could just be taken off you. There you go. Sweep out the log, and then your next card. I draw a land, and my next turn, and go. Well, to be fair, that has happened. I've been in the scenario on the tail end of having that happen to me. Was not nice. He played all the good stuff, maybe sacked permanents to my own artifacts, and yeah, I wasn't exactly chuffed. But I've done the same thing back with it. It's basically a house card. And I keep saying house, but they're just really good cards. Both of them. One of them is banned in the format. One of them isn't. One should be unbanned in the format. I know, there's obviously going to be disagreements between everyone out and about there. And obviously, like previous video, if you feel to disagree or agree with me, feel free to slap a comment in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe to the video. Subscribe to the channel, because, you know, the more subscribers, the better, so people can talk about the conversation that is Magic, the greatness of it. Now, let's get back to the task at hand. I've distracted myself. I clearly keep doing that, mostly because these particular cards are amazing, and I'm just getting excited. So, you know, they're just going to fire off, and we'll get to the one that is today, the actual proper new one, which I have to say, I think is a total step down from the others. It's a 12-drop. It's a 12-drop for a 12/12. And when you cast this spell, gain control of all creatures target player controls. Okay, I like that. You can gain control of all creatures that target player controls. Emrakul, the World Anew, hasn't out yet. It's to do with the Modern Horizon. Okay, it's got less power than the other two. Okay, somehow she's got weaker. If we're going to equate a gender to it, but to be fair, it's more like if you... I'm getting distracted here, but more like if you believed in sort of Lovecraft's writing. It's more like one of those, you know, otherworldly beings. There's not really a gender or control regarding that. It's just, you know, they're the horrible. They're the things from Nylea, the land without shape, or the land without contours or shapes or infinite. And now, obviously, if you're a Lovecraft fan, you know more what I'm on about. If you don't, I apologize. Should look it up. It's interesting stuff. Anyway, back to what we're talking about. So it has that cast ability, and you gain that. You gain control of all gain control of all creatures target player controls. It has flying, protection from spells, and from permanents that were cast this turn. Not as good. It's this turn. It's got to turn up this turn bit. Nah, I think we're getting a watered down version. Watered down version of the OG. Once again, I think in this video, the OG is somehow winning. Okay, and then we've got other more subtext. Okay, so when it leaves play, you sacrifice all the creatures you control. Obviously, if you did grab your opponent's play creatures, they're all going to die. Okay, it's not your big deal, especially if you stole all their creatures and then just let them all die. It also has a madness ability. Madness is a really interesting mechanic, where the idea, if you have for some reason how you discard this, you can then have a subsequent cost, as it's not put in the graveyard, it's put in the exile zone as part of its madness trigger. You can then cast it. Now, the madness is only 6 colorless. Okay, cheaper to cast, does a thing when it turns up, and does a thing when it leaves. However, I'm not seeing any flying or trample on this. I mean, I assume it still flies, because if it doesn't fly, I'm just going to be surprised. No, it's fine. No, it's fine. It's fine, but no trample. No trample. Where's the trample? I like my trample. So you're going to chop it 1/1? 1/1 flying bird? Nah. I'm sorry. I just have to say, the original one is just kicking the arse out of the other two. It's got to be said. It's kicking the arse out of the one that's came out and the one that's going to come out. Now, you're gonna have to fire some really seriously and convincing stuff to say otherwise, because the original banned card is just better than the other two. I know, obviously, we could try and reprint other cards and try and make the card again. Good old wizards like to reprint everything again. Haha, such originality with this. Would explain why we're doing extended blocks, but that's another conversation for another point. And you know, anyway. Right, so if you liked the video, feel free to like, share, and subscribe, and fire a comment in the thing. Tell me I'm wrong, tell me I'm right. Why not continue the conversation that is Magic? Because anything that is a conversation regarding Magic is what I want to know about. It's what I want to be about. So, fire off a message. I'm your host for today, Dan, signing out.